evening. Welcome to the Maryville Cares show that talks about so many different topics regarding parents and children. And just want to introduce myself. I'm Amy Kendall, the Administrator of Community Family-Based Services at Maryville. And I'm just so delighted to be with my colleague and friend, Katrina Ivory here, who really is here to talk with us about a subject that we're all very familiar with, but really is a hot topic. It's a hot topic because we are intertwined with the social media aspect of our life on a daily, hourly, even minute-by-minute basis. And so today's show is going to focus on children and social media. And I know that we are familiar with different newscasts and different articles about, social media and perhaps some of the bad effects of that, and we'll talk about that. But I think Katrina and I have, been working with families and children for so many years, and have children ourselves, and we just really appreciate the breadth of what social media can do. And Katrina, maybe you can talk a little bit just to start us out on thinking about why social media can be such a positive for our children and our families, because that there's a case for that, and then we can talk about maybe some other aspects.
Thanks, Amy. At the end of the day, the social media can be a positive influence with the children as long as we're monitoring. It can teach them about different places. It could open the world up to our children, which is important. We can use it as an educational aid. There are a lot of pluses to social media as long as it's responsibly monitored with our children.
Yeah, and I was just thinking, many of the families that we work with have children mostly under the age of 10, although we certainly have our teens. But when we think about our little ones, there's so many aspects to that positive interaction. In fact, I was recently watching a family that had a little one, probably 18 months to 24 months. And as we know, we all like to click and take pictures. And what I observed was this mom, gave her little one her phone. And she knew right away, like, where the photos were. And she just, was scrolling. And to be honest with you, when you think about, like, a point of connectiveness, it really brought joy to the mom. And they were both starting to laugh. And the little one was just sort of going like this. And it was such a very innocent, loving, positive interaction. And it was just unique to me, not having little ones anymore in my home, just to see how quickly she knew what to do, with that app. And so, although one could wonder, was that an ideal situation? It actually brought mom and baby closer, that little toddler together. So that was kind of neat. And as you talk about the educational component, and also the different ways that children are seeing media. So we talk about phones, we talk about the computer screens, we talk about tablets, going to the movie theater, all these ways that we're getting this visual, what do we call it? Just the influx of words and visuals that can really impress upon our brains and how we view the world. And so I think one of the reasons why we chose this topic is because of the sensitivity of what that we're learning over the years, and much research is showing some of the effects and what that means. So maybe you can, explain that a little bit.
Well, research is showing that our children they're actually getting more screen time than outdoor play in a lot of cases. And while using social media and the internet can be positive, there's also some negatives to it, like the reduction of play. We know play is a time that children learn. They learn about their bodies. They learn about the world around them. They learn how to connect with others. They learn what structure and rules are during play. And what we see now is there is a lot less outdoor play and a lot more media time.
And when I was thinking, and we're just looking at each other,
Yeah.
just the idea of like looking at a person, just like a little
Yes.
one feeling like you're listening, you care about me, and you can laugh, you can cry, somebody's going to respond to you. Whereas in that type of situation where a child is, so connected to that screen, it's not the first time that I've seen children be asked to, let's take a break, and they have a hard time doing that because they become very zoned in on that type of interaction that they're observing, whether that's a movie or even an educational type game.
One thing you said, Amy, that was important is when you watch that mom and that baby's interaction with the pictures, it was an interaction.
Yes.
The phone wasn't just given to the baby and the baby was just left alone with the phone. Mom was interacting with the baby. She was talking with the baby. They were discussing those pictures and those memories that they made. So there's a difference. Mom was being responsible with the media time for her baby, with her baby.
Yeah, and I think, what gets tricky for parents to consider is, when you have a household of several children and maybe some of the children need that tablet or they need their computer or they're trying to look at something on Google for school on their phone, what that is for the younger children in the home. I think one of the things that you and I have seen, and we know how much our children under the age of 5 in particular, but even the idea of children at 12, 18, 24 months, the American Academy of Pediatrics has put out some real important guidelines, and it may seem sort of short, but I think the idea, like what you said, is being able to provide other alternatives to interacting with the world, because we know at some point they're going to get to that's kind of automatic. But the idea of playfulness and using the things in your home, not necessarily actual toys, but we know that children from a young age, from 6 months to 3 years in particular, they'll use any type of object if that's allowable to them to figure out a way to, have cause and effect, or to make noise, or to have an exchange with something, or you have a piece of paper and they're working on their fine motor skills. Those are all little opportunities that are critical to
The growth and development.
when they're going to maybe be ready for kindergarten. And there are play-based kindergartens out there that still have the kitchen, so the kids can learn how to pretend how to cook and how to share and how to set the table. And that's a totally different experience than if you're playing a game and you're watching Blue's Clue and his friends set the table versus you doing that.
Exactly.
I don't know. Any further ideas on that or thoughts?
It's important that we understand putting practice, implementing practice of a skill is important. While the children see the skill maybe on the video screen, it's still not the same as them practicing the skill. That's what's going to help their growth and development. Growth and development is practicing the skill. Somebody modeling the skill for them that's in the room with them, like setting the table, like having a tea party, learning how to socially and appropriately engage with others. The art of conversation.
Yeah, the art of conversation and just basic social skills. When somebody comes to say hello, we know that it's a critical skill as we get older to be able to say hello and to introduce your name.
Yes.
And be able to look at the person. And, those are areas that, as parents, sometimes we really get, bogged down with all the day-to-day stuff. And so we know that there are times for these opportunities for children to do some exploration on social media. But we also recognize that we have to be very, very vigilant in terms of what children are seeing. There's quite a bit of violence, as we all know here. And so how do we figure out a way to allow them to have these opportunities, but do them in a safe way?
Anytime your child is viewing a screen, whether it's looking at a cartoon or Power Rangers, whatever the case may be, it's important that you are actually monitoring what your children are watching and having a conversation with them. Okay, we see Power Rangers with the kicking and the martial arts.
Right.
But guess what? Let's talk about this. It's not okay to kick
right.
someone. It's not okay to give somebody a karate chop. It's not okay because it hurts.
Yes, it does. Unless you're in class, to learn that
exactly
as a skill. But yeah, and I think that when you're describing those situations, it's tough because, it's not only them actually having, social media, but we know that sometimes we get home or it's later in the evening and maybe the kids are, struggling with bedtime, and then we want to decide to watch our TV show. And so our little ones kind of, sit next to us and, maybe they seem like they're distracted, but they're also hearing all these things. And so although maybe some, different types of movies that we want to see or crime shows or all the things that are bringing into the space, negative images or negative words that maybe they'll start asking questions about. But we have to recognize that what is it around our children that's bringing that positive energy and that positive opportunity to have those conversations. Because as they get older, it is going to be tough, and they are going to be exposed to some of these things. And I think what we're saying is, that's going to come soon enough. Let's hold off on those things. Let's keep the innocence of our childhood at bay as much as humanly possible.
And that's so true. I have conversations with moms all the time. There are times that you need adult time, and I understand you want to watch movies, but how about we put our babies down, we read to them, so they get familiar with books and they become literate and they enjoy words and they learn how to express themselves with words. So why don't we read to our children and put them to bed? And then you can have adult time, because children often see what you don't think they see. They often hear what you don't think they hear. And until that kid goes to school and repeats something that they shouldn't repeat, you're like, oh my goodness, where did that come from? Well, they probably heard it on a television show that you weren't aware that they heard.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I just had that experience with a mom saying, this was a little one, 3 or 4, and they came home from daycare, and, and she was just really distraught by a word that they were using. And, at 3 or 4, they don't really know that that's a bad word unless somebody is going to have a reaction to that word. So then we have to be mindful of how we do react to the word, because then they may want to get a reaction out of us when they're not really having any idea of what the meaning is, other than the fact that, mommy or daddy are upset because I said that. And then how do we use it as a teaching opportunity to say, that that's something you may have heard or you may hear, but that's not something that's okay with our family, or however you want to teach to it. Because I think sometimes as parents, it gets quite overwhelming with all the things that are happening and how we have to, we have a responsibility to react and to respond to it. And sometimes we have our A game on and we do quite well, and other times not so much. And then we have to go back and fix that. And we have to go back and say, okay, maybe I didn't say that the right way, or maybe I didn't describe that, but let me set some ground rules for how things will be in terms of, how much tablet time you have, or how long you can play with a certain game or something.
I think it's important to actually have boundaries and a bottom line when it comes to the media, because again, while media and social media can teach wonderful things, it can also teach not so good things. So we have to be diligent with paying attention to what our children are doing, and we have to put perimeters in place to keep them safe.
Yeah, and we want to believe that, we know there's lots of wonderful opportunities. I think one of the things that has reminded me recently, I've been spending some time with my nephew who's in kindergarten. And, their parents are very mindful of TV, and they do a lot of nature shows and animal shows, and, all of that's readily available on YouTube. And,
Yes.
we may or may not be interested in those things, but, that does grant opportunities that if you do take them to the zoo, or if you do go outside, and, we know kids are really interested in bugs and, all these things that are a part of our world that we can use. That's the advantage, is that we have to be discriminate in what we're allowing them to see. So instead of saying you can't see this, you can't see this, what are the, I'm making this up, but what are the 10 things that you can watch? Or maybe this week we're going to focus on one area, and then this week I know it's hard, but we have to think about how we want to be intentional about it, I guess.
Most definitely being intentional. And for me, what I suggest with the parents that I work with is take advantage of nature, take advantage of the world around you, and supplement the learning process with the internet. So if we're going outside on a nature walk and we start collecting leaves, maybe we can get on the internet and talk about the season and the leaves changing during the season, the different seasons. So that's a learning process.
Yeah, and I think, I so appreciate that, because that's kind of one of my favorite things in the world, is to be in nature. And here we're living in the city of Chicago, and where can we find those opportunities? I mean, when my kids were small, still top on the list is the Garfield Park Conservatory. What a wonderful opportunity to be settled, and the kids are able to explore. Or also the nearby forest preserves. I mean, you don't have to go far to hit one of the forest preserves. And, we've been paying quite a bit of attention to a lot of the programming that's for free for younger children. The local parks, the park districts, you do have to dig a little bit. Again, it kind of goes back to being intentional. And then, I don't know, I have found that, the kids can be exploratory, they can run, the fresh air. It's just, we know how much that's good for our own mental health. It's good for the children. It goes back to what you're saying about that physical, being physically active, how critical that is. So there's ways to go about it that can be a fun family activity.
Yes, I agree. And again, in this really busy world that we live in, it is critical that we're intentional with our parenting, that we're spending as much quality time with our children as we possibly can, because we know about brain development. We know in those primary years, they're soaking in everything like a sponge. So intentionality is important, making sure that you're gearing them to ask questions about the world around them, and you're helping them get answers, the appropriate answers.
Yeah. And I think, I was just reminded that, we have to be mindful of just even watching the news. I mean, let's face it, we want to keep up on things, but maybe we don't need to have the TV on in the background during dinner. We want to ask children how their days were. One of the things that you were saying about the interaction is that Chicago Public Libraries are a phenomenal resource
Yes.
for story time, or I think they still have it, but I just remember as a mom, we would go to the library and they would have packets and they would have a puzzle and they'd had several different pieces of a theme that you could do with your child, and then you would take it back just like a library book. Well, that's all for free, and it was something new. Then you took it back, and then you would bring something new home. And I think the challenge for us is that when do we have these opportunities to kind of sit down and think about these things? And I know, Katrina, you've done a lot about vision boards, and what a fabulous way to stop and think. And what maybe considering a family vision board.
I just did one personally with my grandchildren. So I had them do summer vision boards.
Love it. Love it.
Because the summer is rolling around. Let's talk about the summer and some of the things that we want to do as a family, and some of the things you want to do without your family. One of the grandsons wanted to play basketball. The other one wants to do martial arts. So that was encompassed on the family vision board. And we did it over several sessions. So we got to do the art of conversation. They processed critical thinking. And it was an amazing experience for us all.
Yeah, and I think that it's just so simple. Just consider when you think of your child who's 2, 5, 7, 9. What is it that what do you hope for them, and what are we doing as adults to sort of further that growth? And Katrina and I, and parents, we know this is tough, but I think one of the things that is really critical is maybe we can think about a couple takeaways from today. That when you think about social media, what would you we have a couple more minutes, but I think we need to think about, for yourself as a parent, what are the 2 or 3 things that you want to nourish them with that's positive. And I know we can't control all of it, but we can minimize those opportunities.
I agree. And remember, our children, they grow up really, really fast.
Yes.
And in the primary years, their brains just soaking up everything that we give them. So the deposits that we make need to be positive as possible. If we're not careful with all the violence on the social media, even some of the cartoons, we don't want to desensitize our children that violence is okay, because it's not okay. It's not a way of solving problems. It's not a way of engaging the world. So we want to be mindful of what we put into our children.
And I just want to say that, if you want more information, we have a lot of information that we're sharing with families. If you're interested, you can email us at www.maryvilleacademy.org is our website. But we have a specific email that you can send questions, or if you want to get on our newsletter, it's crisisnursery@maryvilleacademy.org. And that's an email that if you are interested in further information, we have a monthly newsletter that is really working hard on giving parents lots of resources that are out there in terms of all kinds of different subjects. So that way we can share this, because as parents, we have to share it with each other. And so we have a team that works on this. And again, if you're interested in learning more from Maryville Academy, we have a newsletter, and you can email Crisis Nursery, so those are 2 words, and that's all together, at Maryville, MARYVILLE, Academy, ACADEMY.org, and those are 2 words together as well. So, just to kind of wrap up here as we think about this topic of social media and the gifts and also the challenges? What could we say?
Again, the children grow up really fast.
Yes.
So try to be intentional with your interactions with the children. It's so important. And they really need us at this time. We live in a world where a lot of critical things are happening. And it's always been my opinion that our children are the true legacy, our true legacy. So we need to invest as much as possible into our children, and we need to be intentional with our investments.
Yeah, and I mean, well said, and be the example. I mean, it's not hard when we're all challenged with things. And, I look in the background here of the two of us, and we have a beautiful city with many different resources. And, we recognize that it can be tough sometimes, but there's lots of different organizations that are doing some really good work. And, again, we want you to consider if you have questions or comments or ideas that you have. Our website is, www.maryvilleacademy.org, and you'll see many different programs that we have at Maryville to help support the community. And if you're interested in a newsletter or learning more about some of our programming, we would really welcome those type of requests so we can be a part of the solution and, have a happy, wonderful world. And we thank you again for joining us this evening, and we'll look forward to seeing you next month. Thank you so much, Katrina.
Thank you.